All right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. If you are new to Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, we are all about bringing science, exploration, adventure, and conservation live into classrooms across Canada, North America, and beyond. So if you head over to our website, exploringbytheseat.com, you can find all of the live events that we have coming up, anywhere from 30 to 40 live events for classrooms each month. So do take a little bit of time and check those events out. So you are joining us today for our final presentation in our Health Canada Presents series. So we've already had 4 presentations, 2 in English and 2 in French, and we've covered a variety of topics from hazards in your home to mold to water and our clean air. So today we get to spend a little bit of time with Kelley Bush, who works for Health Canada's Radiation Protection Bureau. And today she's going to talk to us a little bit about radiation and radon gas. So we're going to learn all about where it comes from, the risks, why it's important we know about this, and of course, how we can reduce some of those risks. We're also going to play a little Kahoot action today. I will share those instructions when the time comes. And then for our classrooms joining, whether you're in a camera spot or tuning in live on YouTube, we will have you get those questions in for us. So let me bring Kelley in with us live right now. Hey, Kelley, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Excellent. Well, it's so great to have you joining us live today. I'm going to let you take over for a little bit because I think we've heard more than enough from me. We're really looking forward to learning a little bit more about radiation and radon.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. As Joe said, my name is Kelley Bush, and I work for Health Canada, and more specifically, the Radiation Protection Bureau. And so I'm just getting ready to share some images with you and to talk to you about radiation and more specifically, radon gas. So I said I work for Health Canada's Radiation Protection Bureau. My job is actually to find effective and creative ways to communicate the very important science and research that we do. So I'm not actually a scientist myself, but every day I get to work with really smart researchers and scientists who are experts in radiation and nuclear power. So today, like I said, I'm talking to you about radiation and radon gas. I'm curious, does anyone know what radon is? Has anyone heard of radon gas? Does anyone want to take a guess? And so maybe, Joe, we can see if there's anyone that's interested. If not, I'll definitely be telling you about it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to put a few groups on the spot here. So I'm going to start with our 3SGF and see if anybody wants to come up with an idea what they think radon or radon gas is.
I think that it's from the sun.
Okay, good guess. And there's definitely radiation from the sun, but that's not what radon is.
Someone else want to come up and give it a go?
I think it means really bad gas.
It is. Well, it's a radioactive gas, so it can be dangerous for our health. Very good.
All right, I'm going to bring Mrs. B's crew in really quick to see if this is a virtual crew. Mrs. B, did anyone send in a guess? All right, maybe we're not ready for a guess from that crew. Let me check our chat really quickly. I've got someone saying it's something from nuclear weapons. That's one guess here. And then another saying it's something from a spill, like a chemical spill.
Huh, very interesting. So the answer is no to either of them. Nuclear weapons, I'm not surprised. Often when people think of radiation, that's definitely something that comes up. So I will tell you that radon is a radioactive gas that comes from the ground. And I'm going to tell you a lot more about it a little bit later. But first, I want to talk to you about exposure to radiation and where that comes from, and more specifically, natural radiation, which you see as an image up on the slide there. So there are 4 sources of natural radiation. The first is cosmic radiation, and someone mentioned earlier the sun, and that's exactly right. So we know we put suntan lotion on to protect ourselves from the sun. We also get exposed to cosmic radiation when we go on a plane on vacation, and also astronauts who are on missions in outer space are exposed to cosmic radiation. They actually wear monitors to measure how much cosmic radiation they're exposed to. So that's the first type of natural radiation. The second type of natural radiation is terrestrial radiation. So I know there's a couple of French classes in there. Terrestrial, terre. It's radiation, the natural radioactive elements and minerals in the Earth's crust or in the ground. The third type of radiation is ingestion, and that's the small amounts of radioactive minerals that are naturally found in the food that we eat and the water that we drink. And the fourth major source of natural radiation is inhalation. The natural radiation that is mixed, or the natural radioactive minerals that is mixed into the air that we breathe every day. Of those four types of natural radiation, inhalation, which is the radiation that we breathe in, is our biggest exposure to natural radiation, and most of that is radon gas. So when you hear the word radiation, what do you think about? So a couple of you already mentioned some of the things that I hear of most often. So when I go out and do presentations like this to people, or I talk about radiation, or tell people that I work for the Radiation Protection Bureau, the questions that I usually get are about nuclear weapons, nuclear power plants, and I also get the question, have I seen the new Netflix series on Chernobyl? I'm not sure if you've heard of Chernobyl. You can see the image of it at the bottom left-hand corner there. But it was a big nuclear power plant accident that happened almost 40 years ago, but there's a new Netflix series on it. And the picture in the top left-hand corner there is a picture of a nuclear power plant in Canada. And then the picture in the top, the right-hand corner is of a submarine. And I don't know if you guys know this, but some submarines and ships are powered by nuclear energy. So one of the things I can tell you that most people don't think of when we talk about radiation is radon gas. So where does radioactive radon gas come from? It's actually a decay product of uranium. And uranium is a heavy metal that comes from the Earth's crust. Again, it's a natural radioactive element that's in the ground. In fact, it's been a mineral in the Earth's crust for billions and billions of years. Before we knew uranium was radioactive and could be dangerous to our health, it was used to make glowing colored glass and to make glow-in-the-dark watch dials. So you see that picture in the bottom right-hand corner there. They call that Vaseline glass, and it's actually glass that was made with uranium in it to make it glow. Uranium decays or breaks down while it's in the ground into a number of different things over many, many years. And finally, after thousands of years, it becomes lead. One of the decay products of uranium is radon gas. And because it's a gas, it can move from the ground into the outdoor air or into homes and buildings that are sitting on the ground. Whereas all of the other decay products usually stay in the ground because they're not a gas and they're not able to move out. Canada's geology is actually really rich in uranium and is amongst the top 5 uranium producing countries. So Canada's been mining uranium for almost 100 years to use as fuel for nuclear power plants and those nuclear ships and submarines that I talked about earlier. So Health Canada leads a national radon program to better understand how much radon we have in Canada, and more importantly, even to educate Canadians about radon and what they need to do about it. Long-term exposure to radon actually represents almost 50% of a person's radiation exposure. This is why it's really important to know about radon and to take action to reduce your exposure to radon. So what you see on the screen now is a radon risk map of Canada. This map was developed by my team using radon testing data from research that we've done over the last 10 years. We've tested over 40,000 homes and buildings. Based on this data that we've collected, we estimate that approximately 7 to 10% of homes in Canada have high radon in them. But the challenge with that is this percentage really varies a lot across the country. So in some areas, it's 2 to 5%, and in some areas, it can be 30, 40, or 50% of homes with high radon in them. So did you notice that the map is all different shades of pink to red? This was done on purpose, and it's done to communicate that there is no radon-free areas. In all of the research that we have done, we did not find anywhere that didn't have some level of radon. So sometimes it's low, sometimes it's high, but there was nowhere without any radon in it. I don't know if you noticed the really light pink area that indicates the levels are really much lower there, and that's Nunavut. And Nunavut is far up in the north of Canada. It's very cold and the ground is mostly frozen. So in that area, homes and buildings are mostly built on stilts. So when radon gas escapes from the ground, it's not getting into the building as much. So that's why we believe that the levels were much lower in Nunavut. All homes and buildings in contact with the ground will have some radon gas in them. Even the outdoor air has radon gas in it. It's very, very low. And the only way to measure it is with a very, very special type of detector that we use at the Radiation Protection Bureau. So the challenging thing about radon gas is you can't see it and you can't smell it. And there's no way to predict how much is in an individual home or building. So even though we've done this research and we know the approximate levels across the country, the only way to know how much is in a specific home or building is to do a test. And that's why Health Canada recommends that all homes should be tested. So what are the important things for you to know about radon gas? So first, it's a radioactive gas that comes from the ground and gets into all homes and buildings, unless, of course, you live in a boathouse or a tree house, or if you live in a building. So above the 3rd or 4th floor, typically you wouldn't find very much radon. So again, I said before, you can't see or smell radon gas. So the only way to know if you have high level is to do a test. And you can see in the image on the slide in the bottom left-hand corner, or sorry, the top, let's start with the top right-hand corner first, how radon moves from the ground, either outside where it gets mixed with outdoor air and gets diluted, or how it can find its way into homes and buildings. I've said earlier that Health Canada recommends that all homes be tested. And the important thing to know about testing is that you need to do it for 3 months, at least 3 months. So we say you need to do a long-term test. And that's important because radon levels can vary over time. And so a 3-month test will be more accurate. The important thing to know is testing is really easy. You can either buy a do-it-yourself test kit or hire someone to do the test for you. And in the bottom left-hand corner there, you can see some examples of some test devices. And I have a couple in my hand. I know the picture of me is pretty small, but I have 2 in my hand. You can, just to give you a sense of size, they're pretty small. They're called alpha track detectors. They're passive, which means that they don't use any power. You don't plug them in. And how they work actually is there's a small piece of plastic inside the canister of the detector. And the plastic is like the plastic in eyeglasses. And what happens is when the radioactive radon gas goes in there, it releases energy and it creates tracks or marks or little dents in the plastic. And when you take this device and you send it back to the laboratory for analysis, what they do is they look at that piece of plastic and how many tracks or marks it's made in that plastic to determine how much radon you have in your home. So why is it important to know about radon? Well, because there's a health, or how much radon you have in your home, because there's a health risk associated to long-term exposure to high levels of radon. The only known health effect associated, again, with long-term exposure, so that's like years and years and years of exposure, is an increased risk of developing lung cancer. Lung cancer is not a disease that kids get. It's one that adults get later in life. And I think we all know, first of all, very important to say that smoking is bad for us, and it is by far the biggest cause of lung cancer. But what about people who don't smoke or who stopped smoking a long, long time ago? They also get lung cancer. And in fact, long-term exposure to radon gas is the #1 cause of lung cancer for non-smokers. So knowing about radon and testing the level in your home helps you lower your risk of lung cancer in the future. So that's why we have a national radon program. So I've talked about what it is and what the health risks are and that you can test for it. But the really important thing to know is that you can also reduce it easily. And that's what that picture is in the bottom right-hand corner that you're seeing. That's a picture of a radon reduction system. And what it is simply is a pipe that's put in your home down to the ground and then piped outside with a small fan attached to it. And it draws that system draws the soil gas and the radon from under your home and pushes it back outside even before it gets into your house. So when you install this system, or you have it installed by a professional, and they're available across Canada, and they turn that system on, it can reduce the radon level very quickly by 90+%. And this type of system is really easy to install. It typically gets installed in less than a day. So sorry about that. So what you see on the screen now are some images from poster contests that we have done in the past with school kids like yourself. Again, I started off by telling you that my job here at Health Canada is finding effective and creative ways to communicate about radon so that people pay attention to it, because not enough people know about it. And if you don't know about it, you can't do anything about it. So one of the ways that we do that is we educate kids like yourself about radon, and then we encourage them to consider making a poster based on what they learned about radon to tell other people about it. So that's what all of these pictures are some posters that were developed by kids like yourself. Health Canada and other experts from around the world, like the World Health Organization, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and the International Atomic Energy Agency, are all working to raise awareness about radon, encourage people to learn about it, and to test the levels in their home. So that, Joe, pretty much is the end of my presentation. I hope that it has inspired some of you guys to learn more about radiation and radon, and to tell your parents about what you learned today and ask them if maybe they've tested their home and your home. So thank you everyone for listening. And Joe, I'll pass it back to you for the Kahoot.
All right, Kelley. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing that really important presentation, because I'm going to admit that, radon is something that wasn't on my radar. I was, there's lots of things that we think about each day and that we know about. And I can see why it's so important to share this with students. And it's such an easy way to test as well, getting your hands on that unit and leaving it in your home. So yeah, very, very cool. And, it's kind of a nice perspective on radiation, because we always kind of hear about it as a scary thing, but it is interesting to hear about how it's natural and around us every day at low levels that we don't have to worry about most of the time.
Yeah, and I really just scratched the surface on radiation with talking about natural radiation. There's a lot of radiation that's used in medical procedures and stuff that's really important, that actually helps us stay healthy as well, right? So, but I wanted to focus on the natural side for today.
All right. Well, let us get into that mentioned Kahoot action. Many students have done this before, so it should be nice and easy for most. I'm going to share a banner right now. Let me get that up there. So to take part in this Kahoot, there's several ways you could do it. The first is to go to kahoot.it. So just on your computer, and then enter this PIN number, 7551045. Many ways to join. If you have one-to-one technology, absolutely, you could use it at your desk. But if not, your teacher can pull it up at the front of the room, and you can shout out your answers to him or her. So let me share my screen, and let me get us into the Kahoot action. This is the one I want. I can see students starting to join already. Excellent, excellent. You'll see everybody has their animal pre-generated name, like the honest mouse, the silver falcon, the powerful cheetah, the purple sable. That's great. So we'll give it a few more moments here, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how we'll join today. If you're at home in a virtual class, you can just scan that QR code, and that'll bring you in on your phone or a tablet or something like that. So as we wait for a few more students to join, I will tell you that there's going to be 5 questions today. They are true and false and multiple choice. You have 20 seconds to answer each question. If you get it right, you're getting some points. If you get it right and you do it really quickly, you get even more points. If you fire it in there, but it is wrong, which is okay, we got no points for you, though. So you've got to think about it for a moment before you pop that answer in. And then as we go through, we will also see how our scoreboard's going. So let me see how things are looking here. If we're getting close to a group that's ready to go. Oh, yeah. Still some popping in, so we're going to give it another moment here.
Okay.
Kelley, maybe just a little bit more about your job as we're waiting here. Is there a typical day? And if so, what does it look like?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. No, not really, because I talk to all sorts of different people. So some days it's receiving calls from people in their homes about questions for radon. Sometimes it's talking to doctors who want to know more about radon and the health risk and what they can do to educate their patients. Sometimes it's talking to builders. Like a really important part of lowering radon is thinking about how we build our homes and making sure that the way we build them allows less radon to come in. So I feel, and some days it's talking to people around the world about what they're doing to educate people about radon and convince them to do something about it. So tomorrow I'm meeting with some people from Ireland, not in person, but to talk about the work that they're doing. So yeah, I feel very lucky to have the job that I have and to be doing something that ultimately is helping people.
All right. Well, things have definitely slowed down. As I say that, a couple more students snuck in, but that's good. Let us go and get our Q&A, our Kahoot going, and then we'll get into our Q&A.
Okay, good luck, everyone.
All right, here we go. First question coming up. You got 3 seconds to prepare yourself. I'll read them out for you as well, and then get those answers in. So, multiple choice to get us started. You need to select 2 here. So I'll give you a clue. Select 2 here. Where does radon gas come from? The ground, the air, the breakdown of uranium, or nuclear weapons. Where does radon come from? The ground, the air, the breakdown of uranium, and nuclear weapons. I think this one's going to be a little bit tricky because I think in some of our heads we did pretty good. Most students got the ground, and then a handful got the breakdown of uranium, which of course is happening within the ground. Very cool. All right, let us get into our next question here. But first, we got to check in here. The Power Cheetah is in first place. And then we can see our crew is right in behind. So let's get into a true and false. You can smell radon gas. Is that true or is that false? Is that true that we can smell it or is it false? Lots of time to get that answer in. True or false? You can smell radon gas. All right, that is false. You cannot smell it. It is an odorless gas. All right. Power Cheetah holding on to that top spot. Let us get into our next question. Which is not a natural source of radiation, or not a source of natural radiation? Is it cosmic radiation, getting an X-ray, terrestrial radiation, or the small amount from the food or what we eat? So which is not a source of natural radiation? Your clue has been uncovered there for you as well. All right. Good job, crew, getting an X-ray. Let's see what happens to our next. All right. We got some shaken up action. The Amazon egret has snagged that top spot. True and false. All homes have radon gas in them. Is that true or is that false? All homes have radon gas in them. Good job, crew. No fool on this crew, Kelley. They did great.
Well done. I'm impressed.
The Amazon egret is holding on. And I think it's important to add that in the vast majority of the cases, it's just not that big of a deal. It's really low levels, right?
Absolutely. That's a really important point, Joe. Like I said, about 7%. So that means 93% of homes are going to have low levels, but you don't know unless you test. And that's why we're telling people it's important just to test.
Okay. Final question. This is for all the glory. What actions can you take to reduce yours and your loved one's risk from radon gas? Test the radon level in your home. Reduce the radon level if it's high. Tell your family and friends, or move to a house if it has radon in it. So which one should we not do there? All right. That was a bit tricky one. I didn't word that one very well, so I do apologize for that one.
Well, I apologize. I think maybe it was the choice. It was my question. Yeah, that is a little confusing.
That's okay. Some got the right answer there, which is you can't move your house.
No, yeah. And I guess the point I was trying to make with this question, and I will explain it, is that you want to test, you want to reduce it if it's high, you want to tell your family and friends about it, but you don't want to move if you have radon in your home. Because remember what I said, every house has some in it, and that's okay. So live in your home, love your home, but test it and reduce it if it's high.
All right. And I think, we talk about this a lot here with classrooms, is the most important thing, the most impactful thing you can do when you learn something new about science or conservation, things happening around the world, is to tell other people about it. Tell your family and friends about it, because odds are they have no idea about things like this. So one of the easiest and best things you can do is talk to other people, tell people what you learn. Very cool.
And I'll throw it out there too. If you guys do go home and you talk to your parents about it and they want to know more, they can give me a call. I'm happy to share my contact information. And we have lots of really good information on radon on our website as well.
All right. Let's look at our podium here as we wrap things up. In third place, we've got the Creative Lark. In second place, the Power Cheetah. And who is holding that top spot today? We've got the Amazon egret was able to hold on. All right. Good job, crew. Thank you so much for playing along with us today. I am going to come back from that screen share now, and we are going to shift to some Q&A action. So like I mentioned, if you're tuning in live, if you're on YouTube, get those questions into the chat sidebar, and we will work them in. And then I'm going to start visiting some of our camera classes, and we will see what we have there. Mrs. B's crew, I know you're joining us virtually. So just put a little message in the private chat when you have a couple questions from your crew, and then I'll call on your group. So I see students waiting at the camera already. Some third graders in St. Albert, Alberta. They look like they're ready. So let's get them going. Hey, boys and girls, how are you doing today?
Good. How many years have you worked for Health Canada?
Well, that's a great question. I have worked for Health Canada for 14 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I see someone already on deck.
What is the most radiation place you've ever seen?
That's a really good question, actually. The way that some of the programs on radon started was there was a home in the United States that had so much radon in it that when they went into a building that had some radiation detectors, they set it off. So I didn't see it, but that's how I learned about it. And that's actually how I started doing the job that I do.
Thank you. Can radon gas be so dangerous that it can kill you?
No, not like I said. Remember, it's everywhere in the air, outside and inside. It's really just a long-term risk. and one that you want to know about so you can lower the risk.
It's one of those nice things that is a risk, but there's things we can do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many radiations did you get in one house? That was like the most.
That's a good question. I would say probably over 1,000, but still, again, even in that case, it's not an immediate health risk. It's just, okay, the level's high. I got to do something about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How much types of radiation is there?
Oh, that's a good question. There's 3 general types of radiation: alpha, beta, and I'm forgetting the third one right now all of a sudden. Gamma, there it is. So alpha, beta, and gamma radiation, but then there's all sorts of different sources. Like I said, I gave you 4 that are natural, and there's lots of others that are man-made as well.
Okay. Wow, our third graders came prepared.
Yeah, what was that? Sorry, can you repeat your question, honey?
Our teacher said another class can take a turn.
Okay.
Oh, okay,
Excellent.
thank you.
Good job. That's a lot of questions. Good job, third graders.
Well
Actually,
done.
I want to ask you guys a question before we come back to you a little bit later. Has anybody ever heard their parents talk about radon or noticed? Kelley showed those detectors. Anybody ever noticed any of those detectors in their house?
Yeah.
I heard a
Oh, I
wee
hear
back
wee.
there. So
Right.
maybe.
Okay.
All right. So maybe there are a few families out there who are doing those tests.
Well, I heard that this classroom is in Alberta, and there's some really good radon research that's being done out of the University of Calgary, and they're doing a lot to raise awareness. So I'm not surprised. That's great.
All right. Very cool. We will come back your way, 3SGF. Okay. Let's take something from online, and then we'll check in with Mrs. B's class, who is tuning in with us backstage here. All right. So, this is an interesting one. When did we first start paying attention to this issue?
Great question. Radon, the risk from radon first became interest around the world back in the 1950s or so, and it was more specifically related to uranium miners and the higher rate of lung cancer in uranium miners, because they were underground being exposed to really, really high levels of radon, much more than we would ever see in homes. So we started doing research, and then over time we realized, this might be an issue also in homes, and we should let people know about it because they can then do something about it. But back in the 1950s, so almost 100 years.
All right, let's check in. Mrs. B's crew is some grade 7s joining us from Woodbridge, Ontario, and they are a virtual class. We have Mrs. B here with us, so let's see if we can get her in here with us. Mrs. B, if you're able to hear me, and you have, there we go. Hey, Mrs. B.
Hi there. Yes, my students do have a few questions. First one is, what is the worst type of radiation?
I don't know if there's a worse type, but the highest risk is when you're exposed to super high levels of radiation that's been released maybe from probably like a nuclear weapon or a really bad nuclear power plant accident, which very, very, very rarely happens. And then you can get something called radiation sickness. Not something that you would ever get from the natural radiation that we've been talking about, like radon, but potentially from nuclear weapons or nuclear power plants that have a big accident.
Great, thank you. The other question is, can radon leak into our food production?
No, it cannot. It's a gas. It gets sort of diluted in air, so it doesn't get into our food production at all. Good question, though, because that's something we want people to know, the right stuff, the right facts about radon. It really is just about testing in the air in your home and lowering it if it's high.
Another question is, what happens if you are acutely exposed to a large amount of radiation?
There's a couple different things that happen with radiation sickness, but you can start to feel really nauseated. If you're really exposed closely, you might have some burns on your skin, those types of things.
Great, thank you.
You're
All right,
welcome.
Mrs. B's crew, thank you for those really awesome questions. And I mean, students are definitely thinking about it. I think you hear radiation, especially when you're younger, and immediately kind of like alarm bells go off.
Yeah.
So it is so important to put the right information out there, that it's all around us. It's natural.
It's everywhere.
And in the levels we're generally exposed to, it doesn't really mean that much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important because people worry about those extremes, like those questions that we got, nuclear weapons and those types of things, which is so rare. But knowing that there are natural kinds of radiation that we're exposed to, and some of them that we should, maybe be aware of and do something about, like radon gas, is really important.
All right. So I think you mentioned a system for kind of pulling radon gas out of your home. This question here is wondering if there's like a lining or something that could be put.
Wow, that's a great question. So actually, I didn't get into the details of it, but that is one of the things that is recommended, is that there's what we refer to as a vapor barrier, but it's basically a thick plastic lining that's placed between the ground and then the foundation of your house that reduces the amount of radon that can get in. And one of the things that Health Canada is working on with other federal departments is having changes made to the building code so that homes have less radon in them, and those systems that I described would already be there. So we're hoping to see that in the future.
Okay. Well, I think we have to go back to 3SG. They are already front and center, and it looks like another little line. So let's go with a few more questions.
What is the country with most rated of that kind of gas?
Country with the highest levels of radon gas. You know what? You might have stumped me. There's I'm trying to there I feel like it's, I don't want to guess, but I think it's Ukraine or Russia is one of them. But I don't have it on the tip of my tongue. But it's not Canada, but we're up there. Like I said, we're in the top 5 for uranium mining. So we're up there. We have a fair bit in our country too.
What happens when there is too much of the
Radon gas?
the radio gas?
What happens? Well, nothing immediate happens. It's just long term. It can increase your risk of lung cancer like 50, 60 years from now for you guys, because you're really young. So it's really, there's lots of things we do. Like, we exercise to keep healthy. We eat lots of vegetables and fruits to keep healthy. When we go in a car, we put a seatbelt on to keep healthy and be safe. And radon is just same idea, that you test your house, and if it's high, you lower it, just so you reduce your risk in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I love these questions, and
Yeah.
there's definitely some wheels turning, and it's not like you're going to come home tonight and be exposed to a ton of radon gas. It's one of those long-term things that we can deal with. All right.
How many types of gas are there?
Radioactive, that's a good question. There's lots of gas out there, different types of gas, because but the only type of radioactive gas that I'm aware of, unless it's man-made, there's probably some man-made ones that I might not know about, is radon. Good question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like this job when you got it?
Yes, that's a great question. I really do. I feel like it's important. I get to help people every day and tell them important information to keep themselves healthy.
All right. I'm going to take a little pause from this group because I know there's more questions. So we are going to come back. You guys are super prepared. It's impressive.
I'm very impressed. Yeah.
We will be back. All right. Mrs. B, I want to give you a chance. If there is 1 or 2 more questions out there, feel free to unmute the mic.
We do not have any other questions, but thank you, Kelley. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
We're going into recess now, so thank you very much for this session. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for
Have a
joining
great
us
day.
today.
You too.
Very cool. Okay, another question here. Let's get one more from here, and this is: do you consider your job to be science communication?
Yeah, absolutely. Science communication, evidence-based communication. So, I was talking about all of the research that we do that helps us give the right information to Canadians to know about the risk, to know about where radon levels are in Canada, those types of things. So yes.
Yeah. Science communication is such a cool field that I don't think a lot of students think about. I think sometimes a lot of people think about scientists in white lab coats and things like that, but we know that's not true. Scientists work in all kinds of different fields, even out in the field, in jungles and other places around the world. But sometimes scientists just talk to themselves and they share what they learn just with themselves. But science communication is such a cool field where maybe science isn't your thing. Maybe some of those courses and things just aren't for you, but science communication needs artists and writers and filmmakers and all kinds of things to kind of spread the message of the things we're learning, the things we're finding, the things we're discovering.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. And sometimes the research they do is complicated, but people, to understand it, need someone who can simplify it and communicate it in a way that it makes sense. And hopefully that's what I've done today with Radon.
All right. Well, we can't leave without visiting our crew in Alberta because the line is still there. So we'll take a few more before we wrap up today, but really good questions.
Mm-hmm.
How did it start?
How did it start? Well, I don't know if you remember, but right in the beginning, I said that uranium's been in the ground for billions of years. So radon's been around forever. Even when the dinosaurs were around, radon was around. So it started a long, long time ago.
Thank you. Which house had the less amount of radon? Which house had the less amount of radon?
Oh, good question. Which house? Yeah, lots. Like we said earlier, lots of houses have really low. Not normally 0, but maybe even in the outdoor air, we can measure about 10. It's called 10 becquerels per cubic meter, but about 10 would be amongst the lowest levels.
Yeah, and remember, Kelly also mentioned that there's some houses, like houses on stilts, or if you live higher up in an apartment, where you just might not get very much at all.
Have any. Yeah.
Cool. Great question. All right, let's take just a couple more. Well, yeah, we'll take a few more. Absolutely.
Is radon gas, can it go in the water? Radon gas?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there can be some radon gas in the water, but it's not a risk to the health. It basically, what happens is when you take a shower or you run a washing machine and the water gets agitated, the radon gas comes out and then it gets dissipated. So it's not a health risk in water.
Can two gases make a deadlier gas if they come together?
Interesting question. Not in the case of radon. There's nothing else that can be added to radon to make it to make it more dangerous at all.
All right.
How old are you?
How old am I? Oh, okay. That's
you don't have to answer that.
No, question.
Is there radon in cars?
No, there is. That's a good question though, because some people think that it's in furnaces or in other machines. No, there's no radon in cars. It naturally comes from the ground.
All right, we're going to take one more question before we wrap up for today, if there's one more question.
Yes, there is. Can anything be added on to radon gas to make it less deadly?
No, well, not added to it, but it's just lowering the levels that you have in your home that make it safer. But I want to remind you, it's not deadly. So it's all around us everywhere. It's just lowering how much you get exposed to over the long term, over years and years, which is improving our health.
All right. Thank you so much to our crew in Alberta. Wow, so many great questions.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
I think they want to say something too. We've got.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bienvenue. Have a wonderful day.
All right.
We will.
Kelley, thank you so much for being with us today, because I think, it's really highlighted by some of the questions that we heard today, that there's a lot of kind of stigmas built up around radiation. And there's a lot of facts out there that maybe aren't 100% accurate. So it is really good to hear good science from good sources, and easy ways to mitigate risks.
Exactly. And that's really the point of it. Radon is not meant to be scary. It's natural, right? It's all around us, but it's knowing that it's there, and that it can get to high levels in some homes, and that we just want to test and reduce those levels.
All right. Well, classrooms, thank you so much for joining us on YouTube. Thank you so much for being in camera spots. And as always, thank you for those awesome questions and playing a little Kahoot with us. Kelley, thank you for wrapping up our Health Canada Presents series. It's been a lot of fun. And we appreciate stealing a bit of your time today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
All right. We're going to sign off for today. Thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy the upcoming weekend.